Women Taking the Lead, episode 184.
Make sure that you surround yourself with really, really great people. And we all have what I call an unconscious level of acceptance in terms of what we tolerate from other people. You should have a very high bar regarding what you expect in terms of behavior from other people. You know, how much disrespect do you allow, right? I mean, how much condescension do you allow? If you allow yourself to be, treated in a poor manner, you're setting that bar. So just be very, very aware of the behavior that you allow from others and set a high standard for yourself.
Hello, my name is Jody Flynn and welcome to Women Taking the Lead, where we are all about creating blasts of inspiration to help you overcome self-doubt so you can lead with confidence, integrity, and a sense of humor. Head over to womentakingthelead.com to join the community and get the resources to support you on your leadership journey. Now, your future awaits, so let's get started. Every child wants to be the hero of their own story. At JulesCustomBooks.com, your child plays the central role in every book, bringing joy and delight when they hear their name and those of their family and friends. Visit JulesCustomBooks.com to make your child the star of the show. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Marissa Levin, who is the CEO of Successful Culture, and she helps CEOs master the three most critical aspects of business growth: leadership development, strategy formulation and execution, and organizational cultural assessment and improvement. Marissa also helps CEOs build the supporting communities they need to grow, including advisory boards and CEO roundtables. Successful Culture ensures organizations have the strongest internal infrastructures and external support systems required to build their greatest organizations and reach their greatest potential. Wow, Marissa, you are up to some big work in the world, but that is just a little overview of who you are in the world. So if you could share a little bit more about yourself and your own humble beginnings.
So my own humble beginnings. I am the youngest of three kids. I have two older brothers that are 6 and 8 years older. So I will be turning 50 soon. And I definitely came from humble beginnings. My father worked for the federal government for about 35 years in NASA until he retired, and he was in a cabinet level position, and he was someone who definitely viewed life from a place of service. And he did a lot of mentoring of a lot of the people that were in NASA that came up behind him. He was very committed to mentoring others and helping the less fortunate kind of rise to their levels of potential within the agency. My mom also was someone that lived from a place of service. She was actually a financial controller for one of the largest AIDS and homeless shelters where we lived, which was in Baltimore. So she ran one of the largest shelters in Baltimore City. And so I grew up very much in a environment of service to others.
So clearly, Marissa, you have come from a background of service and leadership. So I imagine that you've had a lot of support and nurturing to be that person, to be a service leader. But if you could take us back to a time when you were playing small. We all have those moments in life, no matter how much support we get, no matter how many, positive messages our parents give us. There's always a point in our life where we don't go big, right? We think we're capable of only so much and we limit ourselves a little bit. So if you could share us your playing small moment and the lessons you've learned from it.
Well, I'll confess something, Jody. That is, I think, for all of us, a continuous process. Like even where I am today, I built one company and left that in 2012. But prior to that, it was a 17-year company that under my leadership did $15 million in revenue annually. So I bootstrapped that from basically nothing. And then I left that company and I've started a second company and I've written 2 books. And, I've accomplished all these great things like writing for Inc. magazine. But I'll tell you, I still have that nagging voice in my head that says, am I really able to achieve my vision? So we all still have it, but getting back to your specific question about when I did play small, My company that I worked for, the company that I worked for before I started my first company, I was an instructional designer and a writer. And when I was there, I worked as kind of like the protégé to the CEO. And this was before my husband and I had any kids. So I was, working literally around the clock to learn. And I remember going to him, wanting to get a raise. And this was after I put myself through graduate school and I knew how much money I was making them. And I created a really, really strong business case to actually justify a salary increase. And he said to me, "You'll never be worth more than $34,000 to my company." And I really had kind of like this, moment. I mean, it was a serious inflection period where I thought to myself for a moment, maybe I really will never be worth more than $34,000. But then I thought about something that my mom taught me. And, she said, you never let anyone else determine your value or determine your worth. And it was really at that point that I decided that I could add a lot more value to the world than just $34,000 worth. And that's when I decided to start my first company.
Good for you. I can't even imagine somebody being that blunt.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, well, it's kind of good that he was so truthful because it was a choice point.
It was totally a choice point. I mean, I guess I was like 26 years old when that happened. And, I didn't even know what I didn't know at that point. I mean, I hadn't taken any business classes. My undergraduate degree was a concentration in English, it was an undergraduate degree in English with a concentration in Shakespeare. I mean, I had no business background whatsoever except for what I had learned in my consulting role. But I knew what I didn't want, and I didn't want to live a life that was aligned with the value system that he had. And I wanted to make sure that I was working for someone who valued me. And I knew that I would value myself more than he valued me. And that was really kind of like my inspiration for starting my own company.
Yeah. And you had some qualities that were much more valuable than a degree in business. I mean, you were a quick learner, you were adaptable, and you were a hard worker.
Yeah.
I mean, those are qualities like you can't get from a degree.
Yep. No doubt. Yeah. I had a really strong work ethic, and that was something that I was raised with. And, I believed in what I was able to do. So, if you've got a strong work ethic, you believe in what you are doing, those are two of the most important things to be successful.
Absolutely. Now, Marissa, if you could share with us a time in your journey when you had a wake-up call. For some people, this is like a light bulb moment. And for others, it occurs to them more like a slow dawning or the universe sending them a lot of messages over and over again till it finally clicks. But in either case, there's usually a moment where you're ready to take action. So if you could share with us that story leading up to that moment and the steps you took that led to your success.
Okay. So definitely the first one is what I just shared, that aha moment that I had it within me to be successful and to not be defined by somebody else's value of me. And just starting my first company, like that was a huge aha moment. And especially given my age at the time, I mean, I think that is probably a very significant aha moment as we're, at, mid-20s, you're trying to like figure out who you are, right? So that was definitely a huge aha moment. A second aha moment actually came, which, really kind of spurred the creation of my second company. So, I built my first company, Information Experts, and I was so committed and so focused on creating an extraordinary culture. And I had achieved that. I mean, Information Experts, when I was running it, had an incredible culture. When the government basically shut down through sequestration, that's what the whole entire plan was for the government. They literally shut down, and it basically changed its entire business model and pricing model to move to what was known as lowest priced, technically acceptable. Basically, overnight, the government mandated that it was only going to accept the lowest cost vendors, that it didn't matter what your value was, they were only going to go with the lowest price. And We at the time had a lot of contracts that were, we were never a lowest price vendor. We were a high value vendor, or a partner. We lived, like, my whole value system was about high value, high impact, high transformation, right? Like that's what our position was in working with the federal government. We were really going in there to use innovation to transform the agencies and to fulfill their missions. And when they went to what was known as the LPTA model, lowest price technically acceptable model, basically, that completely contradicted my entire core value system for my company. And overnight, we had to slash our rates. So I was paying people, let's just say hypothetically, this is totally hypothetical, I may have paid someone $100 an hour to do work. Overnight, I was told that I had to basically pay them $50 an hour. Okay. And this on top of sequestration, where basically the government shut down, but still required us to perform what they considered to be essential tasks. So I had to have full-time billable people on work, but the government wasn't paying me for that work. After these things happened, it really kind of decimated my culture. And I just decided that I did not align with the core values of the government anymore, and I could no longer run a government contracting company. And I had poured my life into building this company. Literally more than 15 years to build an extraordinary culture. And overnight, my customer basically decimated it. And rather than conform to who they were and what their value system was, I decided I had to leave my own company. And so I left my own company 5 years ago because I just decided if I didn't believe in the core value system of my company, I was no longer the one to run it. And Jody, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a cancer survivor. So I had melanoma 7 years ago. I had a breast cancer scare 6 years ago. So twice in my life, I've been told you have cancer, you're going to need chemotherapy. Like, I went down that road, and thank God, everything was fine. We got the melanoma very early, and we got the breast cancer scare very early. So I never needed any further treatment. But when you hear those words, you develop a very healthy respect for mortality. And I just made a decision that I want to live life every day from a place of joy and meaning. And I understand, as everyone does, that there's a lot of stress that goes along with work and business, building a business and entrepreneurship. But that's different than misery, right? Like, stress is different than misery. And so I just made that decision with my company when the government kind of like put us through, put us through all of that, my life was just worth too much to be subjected to their value system. And so I walked away and I started a second company, and I resigned and I transferred everything to the leadership team that was there.
Good for you, Marissa. I mean, those types of scares, they suck, but the benefit of going through that, and I'm glad they were just a scare and that you're well, but they help us get our priorities in order.
They do.
And put our head on straight, and we start to appreciate what's important and what's not important. And having had that experience when this was all happening, you were able to recognize that the environment you were in no longer worked for you. And I talk to the women in my community about that all the time, how, you can be in a certain company or a certain situation and it totally works for you and it supports you and it helps you grow. And then it gets to a point where it's not anymore. And you have to recognize that, and you have to be ready to move on when it no longer supports you. And sometimes there is nothing wrong that happens. It's just you've grown beyond it, or your values are no longer represented there, just like in your scenario. But you hear too many people who stay in those situations and suffer through it. And it absolutely is a difference between stress and misery. I was just mentioning a few episodes ago, I had Millie Welsh on, and we kind of, joked a little bit about first world problems, right? Because that's what they are, and to recognize when nobody's going to die, nobody's getting hurt, right? Let's put this in perspective. Let's recognize the benefits we have. Stress is not the same as being in a miserable situation. You were in a miserable situation and you got yourself out of it.
You know what? Psychologically, it was devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. I grew this amazing company, and I was able to really focus on work-life balance and work-life integration and do meaningful work. And reinvest in my employees. And it's just the way the whole government kind of just decimated my culture. It was psychologically devastating, and I just had to pull myself out of it. The average CEO spends 7 years in that position before moving on. And I only, I did it 13 years, right? So I almost did it twice as long. And one of the things that I write about a lot and that I help my clients go through as they have to evaluate whether or not they have the right people in the right seats is the Peter Principle, which is basically when someone in your organization rises to their highest level of incompetence. So we have people that are with us and either out of loyalty or just out of, natural progression, we promote people up and up and up to the point where they get into a position where they don't even have the competencies and the skills to be successful in the position we've put them in. And the Peter Principle can apply to the C-suite. But most CEOs and most business owners have a really difficult time stepping out of their role enough to look inside and say, you know what, I may not be the best person for this company anymore. And that's basically what I did, because I don't live or lead from a place of ego. And so I don't equate my whole entire identity with my brand or with my company. I view that as just one element of my own identity. So when I was able to step away from information experts because I knew that in the totality of my life, it was just one aspect.
Mm-hmm. And that's the mark of a highly conscious leader, Marissa. So I'm really appreciating this and honoring your choice. And this is a great segue into my next question, which is your leadership style. We all have different personalities. We all have different strengths and weaknesses and background experiences that all blend together and create the type of leader that we become or we exude and present ourselves to people. So, Marissa, how would you describe your leadership style?
So a few things. First of all, I'm definitely a servant leader. I believe that my role in an organization, like when I had dozens of employees, I really believe that my role in that organization was to do whatever I could do to support them in their success. So whether it was something as trivial as, do you need paper, right? Like, do you have the right supplies to actually do your work, to something of more significance of what is the career path that we're laying out before you, right? So really coming at it from a place of service. That's the first thing. The second thing is one of my closest mentors and friends who I respect immensely taught me, and it's probably something I knew subconsciously, but he just put it in such an eloquent way. The best leaders always subjugate their own agenda for the higher good of the organization. So I'm always trying to keep myself in check, not only with successful culture, but actually with my clients, because I work with so many CEOs, right? And I always want to make sure that I'm showing up in our engagements from a place of, am I the best solution for my client, as opposed to, well, I really need the work, right? And I want to make sure that I have the revenue or whatever it is. I make sure that my ego is always subjugated when I'm working with my clients. And I want to make sure that I always have their best interests at heart. So I definitely lead from a place of supreme service for whoever works with me, as well as for who I work for, which would be my clients, making sure that I am always addressing the need of the relationship, not putting myself first. So I think that's one way in which I lead. I definitely lead from a place of core values. I lead from a place of culture. I've done so much work on culture, and I know that I'm out there known kind of as a culture expert. Tony Robbins, their podcast had me on for an hour talking about organizational culture. And one of the things that I shared was, every organization has a culture. It's either by intention or by default. And I definitely lead from a place of knowing that, culture is what drives an organization. It's the heartbeat. It's the DNA. It's the fingerprint of an organization. So establishing an emotionally safe place, a place where people can stretch themselves, but know that it's safe to do so, a place where they can take risks, but that's also countered by a level of accountability and ownership for what they're deciding to do. I'm very focused on creating highly intentional cultures as well.
I love that. And I love how you talked about culture and how we're either creating it by intention or default, because that's absolutely true. And I see it everywhere. I'm constantly talking about Culture.
Yeah.
We could like sip coffee and talk about that for hours.
For sure.
Yeah, that is amazing. But I know the leaders that are in tune with the culture and the culture that they're creating tend to get the results that they're looking for because they make sure that their goals are represented and supported by the culture.
Right.
Awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. And Marissa, what's one thing you're working on right now that you're really excited about and want to share with us?
Oh gosh, I've got a couple things going on.
All right, we'll make an exception. You can talk about two.
So one of my books out is called Built to Scale, How Top Companies Create Breakthrough Growth Through Exceptional Advisory Boards. And that book, my model, Scale, is the only model out there that teaches CEOs and leads them through the process to build high-performing advisory boards. And so I do go into organizations. I mean, they can get my book and all the templates and the model is in there, but CEOs like to have help in order to implement what their vision is. And I work with CEOs and organizations to help them, determine what they need around their advisory board table, who they need, how to implement, how to communicate it to the rest of the organization, how to leverage their board, how to compensate them, all of it. I work with CEOs to actually help them implement their advisory boards. And we have an initiative now in our company. I've just actually brought on an associate who is also an advisory board expert. And we have an initiative now that we're really, really going to be going hard in terms of connecting with CEOs and organizations that are looking to build advisory boards. And we're going to be expanding that part of our practice. And then another thing is I'm a professionally trained facilitator. So for CEO roundtables, I am the regional chair for Women's Presidents Organization, and I chair CEO roundtables of women monthly. But I am so passionate about this that in 2017, I'm launching additional CEO roundtables that are very specific in very niche markets, which I'll talk about when I launch them. But I'm launching those. And then I'm also working on my third book, which is called Millionaire Mindset. So I'm hoping to get that out by the end of the year. So those are kind of like the three things that are keeping me busy when I'm not working with my clients and when I'm not taking care of my kids.
There's always something to do. Absolutely. Yeah. And Marissa, on the flip side of things, what would you say is your biggest leadership or business challenge that you're faced with right now? Because you and I know new level, new devil, where we've always have room to grow and develop. And so there's always another challenge on the horizon, but they're good. But I'm curious what you're faced with right now.
I think the thing that I'm faced with most is I have a tremendous vision for successful culture. I mean, it's big, between doing all of the leadership development work and my model under that, the strategy execution, as well as the organizational culture work, and then building the communities around my CEO clients, both with advisory boards and peer-to-peer roundtables. I've got that vision. I have a full online academy that I want to be developing in conjunction to support that type of work. And then I also have some ideas for my success store of products I want to roll out. So I've got this huge vision, and my biggest challenge is how am I going to get it all executed?
I love that. Baby steps.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm often faced with the challenge of a big vision as well. And, it can be so overwhelming, and I can do the whole paralysis by analysis type thing. And then I bring myself back down and baby steps. What's the first thing I need to do? Awesome. So Marissa, with that big vision and with everything that you have going on, a lot of times my listeners will reach out to me and women like you come on the show and they're like, how does she do it? I feel so incapable, this, it's blowing my mind that she's able to do all of these things. And what people, don't realize is there's always a support system behind a very successful woman or a man. So if you could tell us a little bit about the people you have around you that support you to do what you do.
Okay, so obviously, given that I'm a professional trained facilitator and I write about advisory boards, obviously I believe that our communities around us are our lifelines. So I have an entire dedicated team of advisors that I have a few of them that I just don't make a move without. I call them all the time and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Can you look over this? I mean, I definitely rely heavily on my advisors. I have a mastermind group that meets quarterly, and we meet for 8 hours once a quarter where we bring our specific business challenges challenges to the table, and we mastermind those. So that's super, super helpful. I'm also a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, and I'm in an EO forum. So that's with another 6 business owners, and we meet once monthly for 4 hours. And then I'm in I am in another group in the DC region called Cadre, and that gives really great support, both professional support and emotional support. And I have to say that my girlfriends are my lifelines. I mean, I've got a couple inner circles of girlfriends from different parts of my life, and I invest a lot of time in those relationships because I just wouldn't be anywhere without them. So I put a lot of effort into the people around me, not only for like sound professional advice, but a lot of it is for emotional and moral support to keep me going.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And now, Marissa, I'm going to do a quick leadership roundup. So tell us, what is one practice you have that helps to make you a better leader?
Oh, I'm a voracious learner. So I am very, very intentional about the content that I consume. So, when I'm in the car, I am constantly podcasting, right? I'm listening to podcasts where I can learn a lot. I read a lot. I listen to books a lot. I watch a lot of TED Talks. I'm constantly, a sponge, just trying to learn from other people on what they've done right and what they've done wrong. And I surround myself with really, really good people. So I'm just very intentional about the content that's coming into me and who I'm around. And I don't spend a lot of time like scanning the Facebook feeds. I don't watch TV a lot at all. I don't scan CNN. I really am very cognizant about the types of information that like comes into my psyche.
And what is one book that you would recommend to a woman to help her develop her leadership?
Oh, wow. One book to develop her leadership. Well, you know what? It's not necessarily, obviously this is a women's podcast, but I think that the best book for anybody to read is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I know that's more of like a spiritual book, but I don't really separate the two from like spiritual, strategic, higher purpose, that whole thing. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz are 4 agreements that we make with ourselves in how we show up in the world and how we engage with others. And agreements have to do, with like be impeccable with your word. What are the messages that we're not only telling others, but what we're telling ourselves? Don't take anything personally, knowing that the way other people treat you is truly a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. Don't make assumptions. How can you come to conversations, experiences, people, events with truly a blank slate without bringing judgment into it? And then always do your best, knowing that your best is going to vary from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, month to month, making sure that you're not judging yourself when you're really giving full effort. So The 4 Agreements is a very, very profound book that will really, change the life of anybody who reads it, because it changes how they show up in the world and how they feel about themselves.
Amen. I'm backing you up on that. That I constantly am saying that book changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, for sure.
If anyone's listening and you have not read The 4 Agreements yet, you must find it and read it. I love it. And Marissa, what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, from a business perspective, fire faster. Like that's just from the pure, like sheer business perspective, hire slow, fire fast. When you've got someone who's not working out, cut your losses. Instead of like keeping the wound open and like literally like having it like drain you, just, cut your losses, wrap the wound, and move forward. But as far as like just in general life, I probably would say make sure that you surround yourself with really, really great people. And we all have what I call an unconscious level of acceptance in terms of what we tolerate from other people. You should have a very high bar regarding what you expect in terms of behavior from other people. How much disrespect do you allow, right? How much condescension do you allow? if you allow yourself to be, treated in a poor manner, you're setting that bar. So just be very, very aware of the behavior that you allow from others and set a high standard for yourself.
Marissa, share with us a success quote or a mantra and why it has meaning for you.
Let's see. Well, again, kind of like getting back to the spiritual side. So there are two that I live by are be the change you wish to see in the world by Gandhi, and then also Buddha, the trouble is you think you have time. So I kind of remember those all the time. Rather than complain about what's happening in the world, what are we doing personally on a daily basis to be the change that we wish to see in the world? How are we treating other people? What is our level of acceptance for other people? What our level of tolerance? Are we judging other people? Just be the change that you wish to see in the world. If we can all be that change, then the world will change. And then the second one from Buddha, the trouble is you think you have time. I truly live life from a place of urgency. And I do that because none of us really know how much time we have. And I think too many people spend it in a negative mindset. And I'm really, really conscious of living from a place of gratitude and knowing that I alone am responsible for my outcomes.
And lastly, Marissa, what is the best way for this community to connect with you?
So that my website is great, and I have a blog that I publish, a leadership and organizational culture blog. It's a lot of mindset work. It really is a mindset blog as much as anything else, and that comes out on Fridays, and they can get to me at www.successfulculture.com. They can sign up there. Also there are all my Inc. articles, so definitely follow me on Inc. You can Google my name, Marissa Levin, on Inc. And please connect with me on LinkedIn. I connect with everybody. I am not one of those people that keeps my network small. I believe we're all connected anyway. So connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter at Marissa Levin, Facebook, I have a Successful Culture page, and I'm on Instagram at Marissa Levin 1. So I'm pretty much on all of the different platforms, and I love to engage with like-minded people.
Awesome. And for those of you listening, you can find all the links and resources that Marissa shared in this episode at womentakingthelead.com. And I also want to, reinforce what Marissa said. I recently was on a Skype call with somebody who was listening to this podcast, reached out to me. We found an opportunity to get on Skype for a little while, and she said it blew her away that I did that. And I said to her, I'm constantly saying, reach out to me, give feedback. I love engaging with you guys. And she's like, I know, but I really didn't believe it. So, nobody out there says, please connect with me if they're too busy and they don't want to connect with people. Like when we say it, we mean it. If you want to, connect with us, definitely do so. And Marissa, thank you so much for taking the time to inspire and enlighten us. We are all better for having met you.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to share, and thank you, Jody, for creating this platform so that so many women can be connected and benefit from it. So gratitude to you.
Your website tells a story about your business. At Zebra Love Web Solutions, Millie and her team are going to make sure your website tells the story you want your customers to hear. Connect with Millie at zebralovewebsolutions.com to create the impression you want to make. Thank you for joining me on Women Taking the Lead. Are you ready to take the lead in your own life but need some support? Head over to womentakingthelead.com/contact to introduce yourself. And to strengthen you on your leadership journey, I'd like to send you off with a quote from Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Again, thank you for joining with me, and here's to your success.